Damian Coory, host of The Other Side Australia.
Welcome. How are you? Good to see you again.
And you?
Very, very nice to see everybody, and big room tonight. There's a lot happening.
It is indeed. We're going to try and find a couple of opinionated guests tonight, people who care about politics. And, well, actually, there are a few people who are quite camera shy. You're going to find somebody.
All right.
I think I've got Raj over here, but he's disappearing. You say hello for a second. I'll tap Raj on the shoulder.
All right. Okay, so we have Senator Matt Canavan appearing tonight. We're also going to hear from George Christensen and also Daisy Cousens is joining us this evening. So it's going to be quite an evening here at the CPAC Christmas Party. Over to you, Dave.
Awesome. I just stole Raj away from talking with Senator Canavan. Very generous. Thank you, Raj, for letting me so rudely interrupt you. Do you want to tell us what you were talking about?
It's good to see so many people here today standing up for freedoms and liberties, what our forefathers fought for, died for. So it's good to see from today the people in Brisbane who are making a stand, and also in the room today, the politicians here.
Let's talk about that briefly. You were at the event, the rally in Brisbane today. Were there a few thousand people there? I didn't manage to get along. Preparing to tech for tonight?
Look, it's hard to estimate. I've been to these rallies before where you have 20,000 people and you can sort of see them. Compared to the MCG football match in the finals time, it seemed to dwarf that size. So, anywhere between 50 and 100,000 people. It was phenomenal, the amounts. Mainstream people, families, grandparents, business owners. I've never seen anything like that before. Extraordinary.
It's really exciting to hear, because something that I'm disappointed to see in Australia this last year and a half is the lack of value for basic freedoms. The willingness to let government just expand beyond its proper boundaries and just become completely invasive.
Well, that's right. And a lot of people there were often nobody sees anti-vaxxers. All the people I spoke to there have been vaccinated, but they don't in the business telling them who they can and can't serve. Like segregation, there was a number of South Africans that were there that said, it brought back horrible memories to the apartheid that they've experienced. And, they couldn't believe now the government's telling them that they're going to shun people from their businesses. So, it was some interesting stories.
Thanks for your comments. We might come back and get some more thoughts from you in the middle of the show. Well, that's the format for tonight. We're going to be having a speech from Senator Matt Canavan, and then before we go into the second half of the evening, the room's just going to be resting for a bit, and we're going to be doing some more conversations. But now Damian Curry's got somebody else to chat to, and before we start tonight, we might have to stop suddenly at 7 o'clock, but Damian.
Thank you, Dave. Tell everybody your name.
My name is Julie Temple.
Yes, Julie. And Julie, what is the reason you're here tonight?
I've come because I believe in free speech and a free democracy. And at the moment, I don't think Australia is a free democracy.
Okay, and I could say what gives you that impression, we probably know the answer.
Well, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've had my vaccines, but I believe people have got the right to decide what they want to do with their life. And it's their choice. We grow up, people have gone to war to fight for our freedoms. And it's a very big freedom for people. I am vaccinated because I've got an elderly mother, and that's my priority. But I think that other people have got the right to decide if they go into a coffee shop. And I'm hearing some crazy laws that, you can work, you're going to be vaccinated to work in a pub, serve a beer, but if you want to buy a bottle of wine, you don't have to be vaccinated. So that's all there. It's crazy.
That always happens, doesn't it, when governments make rules and regulations, and we wind up with just too many rules and regulations, and you'll get all these stupid and ridiculous unintended consequences and contradictions. And
Absolutely. So, I've got friends that are unvaccinated, and I'm happy. I've got no problems.
Yeah, well, I'm vaccinated. I don't mind admitting it. And I had my reasons for doing it, and travelling overseas, and I researched the vaccines, and I made my choice. But I have people who are very close and dear to me who have autoimmune diseases or might have other problems, and they have a right to decide what they're going to do with their own body. The fact that we're even having this discussion scares me.
I know, in Australia, can you believe this? I can't believe it.
I don't think a lot of people can believe it in the Western world, and that's something that's a bit frightening about where we're at right now. Because we're not talking about government sort of recommending the government providing information for people to make their own decision as adults. We're talking about government acting like a parent and patronising and infantilizing people, and just taking our right to make our own decisions away because they don't.
Exactly. There's a lot of intelligent people out there.
Well, and I don't think that our bureaucrats and our politicians, God bless them, are quite as intelligent as they might think they are, or have more than average intelligence.
I know, yeah. I think that it's I think that we, as we heard, I think governments are now going to step away because we're in charge of our own lives, and I think that's what we've got the right to do.
Did you go to the protest today in Brisbane?
I did. I actually worked.
Oh, well, bless you. Yes, I think there were about, I've heard various numbers, but 25,000 to 100,000 people was the very cool estimate. But there's no question that the politicians are going to be concerned about this now on all sides of politics. I can't think of major part. How do you think Spurlo's going to go?
Look, I think that I hope he wins.
Yeah, well, we've done it.
I hope he wins. But I think that my advice is that he starts listening to the Australian people. And there's a lot of people that are really quite unhappy with what's happening with what's happening in particular states throughout Australia. To think that some states are not going to get into to March next year seems absolutely ridiculous. And I think he's got to stand up and be a very big leader and prove that, I can say I'm the leader of Australia as a whole.
There's not been a lot of leadership going on, but thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, over to Dave, and I think he's got some else to talk to.
Awesome. Well, with me here I have a very young gentleman who went to his first protest today like a big boy. Hargrave, welcome to the CPAC Live Christmas Party.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. I'm happy to be here with like-minded people that are all really brilliant.
Now, tell me, what was your observations, experience? Was it scary being part of the protest? Was everybody baying for blood, violence, trying to bash the police? What happened?
Really peaceful. I thought for sure there'd be one or two arrests, but honestly, none of that sort. There's a wide array of viewpoints. There's people who are, pro and anti the vaccine, but all anti the mandates. I think that's around. Yeah.
Brilliant. And was there, what was the police presence like? How many people do you think were there in the total crowd that you could estimate without exaggerating?
Yeah. I think a conservative estimate would have been 80,000. I think a lot of people pegged the number at about 100,000, and a lot of people saying it's the biggest one that they've ever had. But again, this is even dwarfed by Sydney and Melbourne, which had hundreds of thousands. So yeah, it's really remarkable to see Australians rising up.
And so you personally, what was your reason for going to the protest today? What would you like to see change in Australian politics at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as someone who I'm relatively pro the vaccine, but I'm anti the mandate, and I'm rallying up against Anastasia Palaszczuk's decision to ban unvaccinated people from entering a cafe on December 17th. It doesn't make sense that I'm able to go to a cafe with my unvaccinated friends right now at 70% fully vaccinated, but I can't at 80% fully vaccinated. It just doesn't make sense to me. That's not the science. It's not health-based.
No, well, the science has always been arbitrary and I don't know that there's ever, whether it's consistent or inconsistent. Consistent tyranny would still be bad.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. And this gross government overreach, I think, is something that needs to be stopped. And it's great that we've got people here at CPAC tonight, like Matt Canavan and George Christensen. They are really leading the fight, along with people like Jared Rennick, Senator Alex Antic. They're really doing God's work, I think. Yeah.
I'm just keeping an eye on the stage. We're waiting for Andrew to kick off at any time. We're getting the wind-up signal now. So thank you very much for tuning in, and in just a few seconds we will be live to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Andrew Cooper. I'm the founder and one of the directors of the CPAC.network. First of all, I just want to say thank you for joining us here. It's tremendous to see so many people with like minds, and I just feel every time I come to an event like this, I just feel so sort of emboldened and happy that that there are so many people that are prepared to support us and to make the effort and put themselves forward. We're very fortunate to have some dignitaries in the room, so I'd just like to welcome those. The Honourable Nick Minchin has joined us. The Honourable George Christensen has joined us. Georgie. Former Senator for Queensland, Joe Lindgren, is in the room. And soon to be host of a panel here in a few minutes, the Honourable Gary Hargrave, I'm hoping, is in the room. Look, it's great to see them here as well, and of course, our special guest. I haven't introduced him. I'm going to leave that to our chairman, Roger Emerson, to do that honour in a few minutes' time. We'll have a short break in a moment. I just wanted to say that I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about CPAC and what CPAC's about. CPAC is for the people that aren't happy being beige. For too many years, and over this period of 18 months, there's just been this sort of this groupthink, and we're all thinking the same, but we're not all thinking the same. And the crowds today that appeared around the country says that there's a lot of people now that aren't happy with beige. There's a lot of people that are full of colour and life. And if you're here today, I think that's what you are. You're full of colour and life as well. And I welcome you and I congratulate you on being that sort of person. This is your home. CPAC is in startup mode at the moment, the CPAC.network. But once these stupid borders open, we'll be sweeping down through the southern states. Nick will be in South Australia, where you left. Welcome to Queensland, by the way. And we want to gather up those that have a zest for life, that aren't beige. We want them to join you, to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being at CPAC. In a few minutes' time, Roger Emerson will introduce our guest of honour. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You'll have your attention, please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My name's Roger Emerson and I'm the chairman of CPAC. Thanks so much for being here tonight. It's wonderful to see so many people here. You know, a lot of conservatives get worried that things being woke and socialist are taking over our nation and Western civilization. Would you agree? A lot of people are a bit worried about that. I'm going to ask you not to get too worried. I'm going to ask you to think about the Menzies Forgotten People, the Howards Battlers, and of course ScoMo's inevitable quiet Australians. I'm going to ask you to think about all of those people who go about their lives in their Western society, minding their own business, not getting involved in too much, but when it comes to the ballot box, they don't like a lot of woke and socialist policies. And you will have seen that just recently when you looked at the results in the US, where a sort of rampant woke social policy was put into several states. And you saw what happened when those quiet people, the majority, actually got to the ballot box. So get energised. You're actually in the majority. They're just silent. They're a bit quiet. Now, the chap I'm about to introduce, that bloke, who's definitely not woke, is not a particularly quiet bloke when it comes to talking about conservative values and the preservation of Western Judeo-Christian values in our society. He's a bloke that the woke really don't like very much. In fact, recently, he gave some advice to the Wiggles, as you may know. And he told them that if they got too diverse, going that woke, they might go broke, and we'll see what happens with that. Ladies and gentlemen, the bloke I'm going to introduce is a champion for our values. He's a champion for the things that matter in this state, such as resources and agriculture, and also the regions. He's a great bloke. Please welcome Senator Matt Canavan.
Thank you. Thanks, mate. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Roger. Great to be introduced by a great friend there. I do want to recognise some other great friends of mine. Particularly, I'll start with Jo Lindgren down the back there. Great to see you again, Jo. You didn't have long, and she deserves a round of applause. I mean, it's in Jo's case, it's one of those you don't know what you got till it's gone. And seeing Jo on the front lines out there today at the rally, it's a shame she's not still in the Senate fighting with Jared and others. She'd be.
I think she'd be another Jared right now for our cause if she was there. And of course, George, good to see you, mates. George's about the same age as me, and I still think his best days are ahead of him. I think he's still going to make an enormous impact in our politics in one way, shape or form. It's a shame he's not going to be joining me on those flights to Canberra on Sunday, but I'm still hopeful of your impact. I saw Gary come into the room. Great to see you, Gary. Looking forward to hearing from you later. Another person that still contributes, and of course, Nick Hinchin. It's great to have you here, Nick. You're just you help harken back to a better time of conservative government. You know, we really miss people like Nick in Canberra. So I don't think he probably wants to come back. And his wife, Carrie, probably definitely doesn't want him to come back. But look, it is great to be here, ladies and gentlemen. These are very important times for ourselves. It's good to join with you going into another festive season when we should all be very happy. I, though, am a little bit sad this week. A little bit sad because that Glasgow conference ended last week. You know, I feel it's a little bit of a hole this week. I was having so much fun. I can't go through all the highlights, but do you all remember? I think it was sort of day 42 or something. They had the Gender Innovation and Science Day. That was good. That was a blast. They had BBC Scotland. Some of you might have seen. They had BBC Scotland tweet out during the conference that gas is a common form of pain relief in childbirth, but we must also think of its impact on the planet.
Now I've had 5 children. I'm not planning to visit a delivery suite again, but for any of those of you who are, particularly the gentleman here, can I just give you a piece of advice? Don't. You'll make plenty of mistakes. You'll definitely make mistakes, no doubt about that. But don't say to your wife, "Look, honey, I know it's tough, but we do have to think about the planet." Don't say that. Don't do that. And look, the other one was the UN. The UN's come out and said you can only have 14 grams of red meat a week, I think. So you're basically allowed a steak every few months. So if we are having steak tonight, that's it for you for a quarter or so. So enjoy it while you can. But look, my absolute favourite though is, I'm sure, a hero to us all, one of the greatest Australian entertainers we've ever produced. And that, of course, would be Andrew Twiggy Forrest. Geez, he put on a show. He put on a show. And my absolute favourite was he gave an interview to the Sydney Morning Herald, and he was trying to say how he was going to single-handedly convince Xi Jinping to change his tune on COP26. And he was saying that, look, in his knowledge, and I had to defer to him. I haven't been to China for a long time. Don't think I'll be welcome back. And he said he knows that the younger generation in China want climate action. And he went on to say, if he knows one thing about the Chinese government, it's that they're a good judge of the mood of their people. Yep. And again, I sort of reflect and I thought, well, actually, he's kind of right, isn't he? Because when's the last time you heard a person in China complain about their government? It just doesn't happen. And if you do hear it, they usually within a couple of weeks they're recanting it, they're apologising for it. So he's right. He's right. Doesn't happen. These people are jokes, right? They are absolute jokes, and we've got to ridicule them. That's the way to win, right? And yesterday, or actually, sorry, on Thursday, for my sins, I did an interview with Peter Fitzsimons. I thought that might get a reaction. It's actually a pretty cordial chat. I enjoyed the discussion. I didn't mind it. And he did, though, ask this obligatory question that, Matt, you're one of the greatest opponents of climate action, but you got 5 kids. How can you look them in the face knowing that, you're wrecking the planet for them? Now, I gave him a stock stand answer I won't bore you with, but part of me, when I get asked this question, one day I do want to say, yep, you got me. I'm sick of my kids. They never tidy their room, and that's it. I'm gonna leave the planet a burning wreck. That'll get them. That'll be my revenge. That's exactly what I'm doing. But there's a serious point here, though, right? That one thing you got to give it to them, the likes of Peter and Twiggy and all of these modern day Pharisees among us, self-appointed Pharisees that tell us the law. They're very good at taking the moral high ground, right? They constantly present their arguments and what they're doing as the moral one. And if we can, just right now, think about some self-reflection on what we often do, how we present ourselves, we usually focus more on more prosaic things like people's jobs and cost of living. And that's very important for a politician like myself and George to do that, because that's how people vote. They vote in their real lives. And we're effective at that. We're pretty effective at that. Won more elections than we've lost at the federal level, at least, in the last couple of decades. But I do think it's about time that we storm the left's so-called commanding heights on morality, because this is the time to do that. They have no credibility to take any kind of moral high ground right now. Because I am not. The days of me taking lectures from woke, left, self-appointed moral leaders on refugees are over. It's over, because we've had left-wing governments around this country lock out 3-year-old children from seeing their mum for 2 months and present it as some kind of good policy. So they have no ground. They have no authority anymore to lecture us about how other people are treated when they have sat back and done that and done nothing about it. Name the Labor leader around the country that called that out. They only relented when they were under massive public pressure to do so. I'm not going to take lectures from the left about rights at work. Rights at work. When they have sat back here and are almost cheering on giving governments the right to sack people for not taking a medical treatment. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. I'm not going to take lectures from the left about funding hospitals and healthcare and what we don't do, and we're going to privatise Medicare and all this other rubbish. I'm not going to take lectures on that when this government here denied a young mother or an expectant mother access to a Queensland hospital, and she subsequently lost an unborn baby as she had to wait to get service in Sydney. That was done in our state, in our name. Not going to cop that anymore. Now, we have a real challenge in front of us going forward. It is the festive season. It's time to celebrate, time to have a bit of fun. Hopefully we'll get some restrictions lifted in a month or two here, but we'll have other ones put on, of course. But in the new year, we've got to remember that we're going to probably have to fight for things that other generations of Australians took for granted. 100 years ago, there was a pandemic. There was a pandemic in 1920. And that generation just been through a war. A few years later, they had a depression. Later on, they fought probably the most important war in modern times against the most evil regime ever on this face of earth. They had to fight for their freedoms. They had to fight a lot. They had to give up a lot. And we are all the beneficiaries of the sacrifices they made. And it was a great thing that I was very lucky to be born 40-odd years ago in a country free. I was born free. Never had to fight for it. Just was my birthright. But I really am sad. It's sad to say that that's probably not the birthright of children over the next couple of years in this country. They probably don't get it for free. We're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to fight. We're going to have to fight to roll back these COVID cops who are trying to tell us what to do. We're going to have to fight to stop the globalists and elites trying to tell us how we run our economy, what kind of jobs we have, how we protect ourselves from Chinese communist aggression. We're going to have to fight for that. Now, I'm an optimist. Yep, I am an optimist. I think the people you see on the streets today, the reaction you've seen from some of the laws in the last couple of weeks, shows that the Australian people are with us. They're with us. But, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the quiet Australians to get loud. It's not going to happen automatically. This is... To win, as I say, I'm an optimist, but to win, we're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to talk to your friends. We're going to have to make this room bigger. We're going to have to take back our country. We're going to have to restore our freedoms. We can do it together, and it's groups of like what Andrew's doing, which is going to be the vehicles through which we do this. You are all instruments to do this. George and I and others can't do it on our own. We're not going to win this battle on our own. Tomorrow, I'm going to fly to Canberra with George, and I am going to support George's bill to override the state-based mandates on vaccines. And please give me the indulgence to say it's not Pauline's bill. Pauline's taken George's and Craig Kelly. Craig Kelly did a lot of work. In fairness, she's taken that bill, changed a few words and sold it as her own. But George did this months ago. He set it up. But I'm not going to tell you a fairy tale, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to fight for that. I'll do everything I can to fight for that. But I don't think we're going to win. My assessment right now is we won't pass legislation in Canberra to do this stuff, but it'll be part of a process that pressures the state governments to highlight this issue. And that's where you all come in. We can't just rely on our politicians. We can't just sit back and expect it will all happen for us. We've all got to get active. We've got to take action, not just talk. We've got to take action. We've got to get out on the streets. We've got to make sure we rally people. The next election's a major way of doing that. We've got to take this country back. We've got to restore our freedoms. But in the meantime, I hope you have a great Christmas. Thank you very much for all you're doing so far. There's a lot more to do in the future. All the best and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt Canavan. Please thank Matt. Wonderful speech. Thank you, Matt. Ladies and gentlemen, right now we're going to have Gary Hardgrave with with Matt Canavan here on stage, and Gary's going to conduct a forum/interview, aren't you, Gary?
I feel like
All
I'm the
very
token
best.
lefty in the room after that. Brett Mason, former Senator for Queensland and Ambassador as well. Brett, great to see you here tonight. I feel very comfortable in this blue and white background, I must say. I rather like that. That's good. Nick Minchin is a former colleague of mine too, and I simply want to acknowledge him almost as a traditional owner of the ethical space in which we're gathering here tonight, okay? He is an elder, and I've got to say to Matt Canavan, I don't disagree for a moment about the fact that we've got to take back our country. It may not please the room, though, if I say to you, I am concerned, though, in the way in which a few are infiltrating a public demonstration of that view and creating an easy narrative for media to say they're crazies, they're all mad. George Christensen's bonkers, you know. Matt Canavan, well, you know, he's a ratbag. Well, they're my kind of bonkers and they're my kind of ratbags. But I'm just simply saying to you, the most effective thing we can do is to trust our friends, trust our family with our views. Talk to them. If everybody knows 7 people, then infecting the 7 we know and tell them to go and infect 7 others to get the word out is going to be the most effective and best thing any one of us can do. We've got to start a ripple that becomes a wave that in fact changes the pond. Because, Matt, and this is the point I wanted to come to you on, it seems to me that we have had a generation plus, your entire life, we have had schools, and I left school probably just before you were born. I'm not very old, but I've just left school. I did complete year 12, I want to stress, and went on to uni and also, in fact, I was the first ever Griffith University graduate elected to the federal parliament. First ever Griffith graduate who was a minister and the first ever Griffith graduate that was a vice-regal representative in Australia. So that was pretty neat. And it's such a great left-wing campus. But Matt, how good are the Greens? Don't we?
Where are the right-wing campuses? Where are they?
Sorry?
Where are the right-wing campuses?
I don't know. Well, that's a fair comment. I just want to ask you, Matt, how good are the Greens? You can't win this next federal election without the Greens. We want to hear from the Greens. We want to see the Greens. We want the Greens to put it out there. Albo thinks he wants to be Prime Minister, but he'll only be able to do whatever it is the Greens let him do.
Absolutely, Gary. And I did miss Brett. Sorry, mate. That's the problem with recognising people. Always miss someone. It is great to see you again. Brett's someone. Yeah, he deserves a round of applause. He did so much work on trying to pull back the left-wing radicalism on campuses and broader education institutions. And that too is something we need to focus on in the years ahead. We absolutely need to return to that agenda. There's a lot to do there. Now, on these, the Greenies, yes, they are such a boon for our side, and I think I'll permanently provide, about to do these again, I'll be giving Bob Brown another Christmas card this year, as I did last 2 years, actually. Now, unfortunately, I don't think Bob will be back to Queensland next year.
Well, then why don't you find a Bob?
Well, I'm doing that. I'm working on that. I'm working on that.
Good idea. Okay.
I think, see, I've come up, we do face a bit of a challenge where all these alphabet groups are against us. The ABC are against us. Now the TGA, I don't have much time for them anymore either. And George definitely doesn't like the TGA. And there's this new group though. There's the Labor Party, the Greens, there's Bob Brown, and there's Malcolm Turnbull. It's the LGBT Alliance. They're against us too. They hate us. Now, as I said, I don't think Bob Brown will be back, but I have got a lot of hopes that Mr. Malcolm Turnbull will pay us a visit to the north of the Tweed during the election. He's doing a lot of work on being Bob Brown 2.0. I can't wait for it. Not sure if we'll be able to entice him up to Claremont again. but he is more than welcome in Central Queensland anytime he likes.
He'll at least bring a better quality vehicle with him, though.
A private jet, probably.
The key thing here is we need those guys to do a lot of yakking, because I agree with you. I think a lot of middle Australians are absolutely fed up to the back teeth with this command and control kind of country that we've got right now. And as much as it's easy to sort of go along, to get along, to survive where we're at, this is a lot of unpicking we've got to do. And part of the problem, Matt and George, is some of the colleagues. Minchin's gone, Mason's gone, Hardgrave's gone, heavens above. There is a bit of a debacle down there. We need you to contest a House of Representatives. I refuse to call it a lower house seat. It's the People's House. You need to contest a House of Representatives seat, because the speech you've given tonight proves to me you should be Prime Minister. One day.
Oh, that's a great question.
That should probably kill his career, I reckon.
That's right. Oh, I think I've done a pretty good job of that the last few months myself. But look, I'm not as pessimistic about that. I think there's great people in our party room right now. You're going to see some of that. I'm not going to shouldn't single people out, because again I'll do another.
No, you'll kill their careers as well.
Yeah, that's right, and I'll miss people. But I think you'll see that on some examples of that the next fortnight in Canberra. Maybe some people you haven't heard of before will step up to the plate. So I think there is that chance. And look, I was talking about this before. There is a shift going on around the world in politics. Right? There's an absolute shift where the Conservative side of politics has this unique, maybe once in a century possibility of capturing the large swathes of working and middle class people to support them. Because the left of centre parties around the world, including the Labor Party, have deserted non-tertiary educated people. They don't represent them anymore. They don't talk like them. They don't understand their lives, and they're certainly not fighting for them when they go away from their electorates in Canberra. And so we have this opportunity to do that, to say that, look, we believe in aspiration. We believe in our country and protecting what's great about this nation. We believe in the dignity of families and wanting to keep them together so they can support young children and keep communities together. That is a message that attracts those constituencies. And this is not just a theory. At the last election, George did that where he is from. Where I'm from, we won every statistical area of Rockhampton. And this is a place where you've got meatworks, you've got railways, you have deep red tiger country Labor districts that have never been close to voting for the Liberal and National parties. But the last election, we won every area, turned it all blue, because we spoke their language, we fought for their interests, and they rewarded us with their vote. Now, the corresponding thing, though, the corresponding difficulty for us is when any shift occurs, there's winners and losers. And we are finding it harder as a political party to win what we used to be blue blood seats in the inner city. And that's tough for those people that represent those areas. And that's causing a lot of tension in the party, and it's difficult to find a clear narrative. But I am confident over time we'll work those things out. And we still have, whatever the results at individual elections are, if we've got the guts to do it, we have the opportunity to basically have a permanent majority among the Australian people if we take this chance.
You mean you want to stand for stuff? You mean you want to trust people? I mean, the thing that strikes me as extraordinary, and Nick mentioned, I keep picking on Nick only because he is an elder statesperson. He's only a couple of years older than me, but that makes an elder statesperson. But the point I make is that I think governments, particularly those on the left, but too increasingly, we're seeing too many examples of governments of all persuasion not trusting people. They tax us too much. They regulate us too much. They legislate us too much. Now we have to tell them every time we go to Bunnings, to the toilet, to whatever. I've just been over to somebody who shall remain nameless, and I think it was possibly a lampoon, but he's having a massive Christmas party. We're socially distanced, centimetres. But he had the QR code on his front gate just in case, because he was worried he was going to get invaded. If you're going to go and buy a cup of coffee in Queensland after we hit the 80%, Matt, they will have a police person next to you, police officer next to you saying, and what's your vaccination status? Now, so I'm just simply saying trust. How do we restore trust in the people so the people can trust government again?
Well, one thing I think we've still got some hope for is we still have a federation, and we have governments of different colours and doing this in different ways across the country. And I will support this legislation to override state mandates, but I would just offer a word of caution about this approach. We've got to be a bit careful that Canberra doesn't take over everything, because then we will be stuffed, guys. We will be stuffed because the shoe will be on the foot at some other time in the future. I do have a lot of hope in the New South Wales government, particularly Dom Perrottet and his approach to all of these things. Don't forget that just a few months ago, the discredited Australian Medical Association was out there saying that if Dom Perrottet opens up, we're going to have thousands of cases. The hospitals will be full. It'll be an Armageddon. What happened? The exact opposite. Cases fell, and the reopening has been a roaring success. And his example has been the key thing that has led Dan Andrews to reduce some restrictions as well, notwithstanding the mandates and that, but reduce restrictions. Anastasia Palaszczuk opened the border, increasing pressure on Mark McGowan to do the same. That's the shining light here. And so there is great hope here that, again, come just 2 days before we impose vaccine mandates, New South Wales will be removing them, and I hope they stick to that. And that will be a great example. There'll be this, okay, in Sydney, this is what they're doing. In Brisbane, this is what we're doing. Which one works best? And I'm putting my money on Sydney on this one. Despite I'm a proud Queenslander, I think they're going to be the better example for the country. Hopefully they do, and then that will put increasing pressure on Anastasia Palaszczuk to restore unity and trust among the Queensland people.
It's interesting, though, when you look at the way that Anastasia Palaszczuk has gone with so many of the decisions she's taken, because it's actually been a case of, I don't really trust people, but they should trust me. Aren't you lucky I'm making you safe? I mean, do we all feel safe? I feel incredibly safe as a result. Thank you very much, Stacia. I wake up every morning, say, how safe do I feel? But this gig has got to be up sometime soon. I mean, I see the Victorian voting intentions have said that Daniel Andrews has made them so safe that they want to vote for him again. My suspicion is they're worried that somebody's actually monitoring their phones so much that if they don't say they like him, they'll get a knock on the door. I mean, this kind of stuff, I can't even believe we're trying to make jokes about. This is seriously not the Australia that I have been born into. This is not the Australia grandparents fought and died for. This is not the Australia we should have, Matt. What are you going to do to fix it? Chill problem.
Yeah, okay. Easy. Look, I mean, I think there's one part of that narrative that's just missing there, and that's the role of the media. And
Daisy Cousens and I can't do all the shows. Okay?
Well, I think Daisy's the solution. Actually, I'll come back to her. But the media did hype this up last year in a desperate attempt to boost ratings and newspaper sales. And there's no doubt that fear is the greatest motivator for any human being, and a lot of people were afraid, understandably so. And I say that as someone, I'll never walk away from the fact that I supported the first lockdowns. I think it was sensible to look, okay, we got this thing, we don't know what it is. It's come out of Wuhan, could be anything. Let's pause and take a breath and see what's going on. But it's come pretty clear pretty quickly that this wasn't as severe as we feared, that there were alternative approaches to a strict and widespread lockdown. But yet still the media's kept up at every opportunity, the fear, the condemnation of people doing the wrong thing, and now the treating of certain people who don't get a medical treatment as some kind of modern day leper community. That has had a big impact on our social discourse, which then has an impact on politicians. And some of them exploited it for their own reasons. Others have just sort of felt they've had to go along with what has been the common discourse. Now, I do think that there is hope. People are losing trust in media rapidly. And so their constant attempts to go back to the fear well will increasingly run dry. That people like Daisy Cousens on YouTube and others have enormous reach and enormous impact. And so you mentioned earlier the attempts to denigrate some of the protesters, and we saw an example of this just in the last 24 hours or so, where the media were all jumping on this MP's young daughter who'd been attacked in Melbourne. And that was used as an example of the radical, violent intent of people protesting in Melbourne. And then within 24 hours, people on social media, well, the police helped, of course, but people on social media were able to spread around the fact that, hang on, this MP's daughter had been spray painting over anti-vax posters. She was, I'll just recount this for those who haven't heard. She was then told off by someone, apparently, on the street that, hey, what are you doing? She threw the spray paint can at this person, missed apparently. He grabbed the spray paint can, threw it back, and he hit, and she got a gash. Now, I'm not making light. Like, he shouldn't have thrown it back, and she's been injured. She's got a bit of a gash on her head, apparently. But that was wrapped up into she'd been somehow, well, it was presented as she'd just been somehow innocently attacked on the street, allegedly because of her relationship with her father, who was an MP. Now, we have a way of exposing these things now that we didn't have in the past, because lots of you have access to social media. We don't need large budgets or be on TV like Gary or I to make a difference. We've all got a role to play, and that's what I say about action. We can take action to fight back against this and prevent that media narrative becoming the dominant discourse, and that will then influence the politicians, because ultimately they'll do whatever is popular to get elected.
Yeah, I think Scott Morrison has tapped the vein in the last few days again, rightly saying no one wants violence. I don't want violence. I don't want people to get manipulated into a violent situation either. There's some golden rules about doing unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Not necessarily well practiced. It's been codified, it's been regulated, it's been legislated, it's been taxed. That whole business of treating people the way you want to be treated yourself has been perverted by generations of politicians. Frankly, I voted for some legislation. Let me think. The Water Act, the EPBC.
I got a few. I'll roll off here for you, Gary.
Well, there's two that I keep constantly saying get rid of them. I think one was Rob Hill's and one was Malcolm Turnbull's, but both of them have been used to actually reach a point where I'm told a constituent of yours in far north Queensland told me, he said they're waiting for a form that they have to fill in to mow the grass. That's how bad the EPBC is being manipulated. So treating people as you want to be treated yourself doesn't strike me as a bad thing. And the unfortunate part is the turning the other cheek. I'm getting very biblical here, but it just is a time in which we've all got to stay calm, confident that we're on the right path here, that we can trust each other, that we can talk to other people about stuff, but don't get coaxed into the violence, because these people who are used to street protests are infiltrating some of these street protests. They're the ones that are causing some of this trouble, in my view.
Absolutely. And particularly this time of year, we should remember the lesson of Jesus Christ, someone who did speak the truth, who was attacked, but also always did so with humility and courage. And courage, as Winston Churchill said, courage is the most important of all the virtues. Because all of the other virtues rely on having courage, the courage to tell the truth, the courage to be honest, the courage to help your fellow man who might be being ostracised when you may be then lumped into that group if you help out. So we have a great lesson in our culture to look to and guide us through these years, and I'm confident if we all do that, we will take this great country back. I just picking up on something else you said there about the attempt here to vilify or aggravate protesters. It's very, very important, that principle. And this has been going on, if we can keep the biblical lines going, since Adam was a boy. When we did the Bob Brown protest during the last campaign, the anti-Bob Brown protest in Claremont, I was a little nervous at first because I thought, well, these sort of things can get out of control. We went along with it. There was a meeting we had just before with the police a couple of days before, and there was representatives of Bob Brown group, representatives from our group, and this is just a bit of a funny story, really. I don't think it's got much point. And the Greenies put to us, they were very organised, all right? They have all these pages and they've all organised about what they're going to ask the police for and everything. And one request they put in is that, well, at the anti-Bob Brown protest, there can be absolutely no alcohol served. Now, they said that knowing we're going to have it in a pub, knowing that we're going to be 300 or 400 CFMEU members at this thing. So if we turn the taps off, things might have got a little bit ugly. And so we immediately countered, or it wasn't me, but a lovely lady called Carla McPhail up there in Newburn, countered with a suggestion, well, that's fine. If there's no alcohol to be served here at our protest, there'll be no drugs at the Bob Brown rally. And they pulled back.
And at least now everyone has to scan a QR code before they start protesting. So we know who they all are. They all get a letter from Bob at the end, possibly. Who knows? I guess, Matt, that's the point. Where to now? How long does it take? If it's taken a generation or more, I always like John Lennon's idea of giving peace a chance. That was all seemed reasonable. Flowers, flower in your hair, see you in San Francisco. John Lennon's best line was that time wounds all heals. I like that. Not heals all wounds, but wounds all heals. He was very good at that. But I think he'd be on our side if he was alive now. God rest his soul.
Well, a lot of them are. The funny thing is, if we did some of these, and George knows this. He might. I think he's talking later. There's lots of at these anti-vax rallies. A lot of anti-Adani rallies. In fact, there's a in Yeppoon where I live. There's a house that used to have all these anti-Adani messages up. It's now got big signs saying up "End government tyranny." Don't let them divide us. That's what's happening here. And look, we need to welcome that. We need to stay together, right? We need to put those sort of differences aside. This is much more important than a coal mine. As much as I wanted to see that mine go ahead for my region, our freedoms, our institutions are much more important than that. And we have allies there on that other side. I think it could be quite interesting to see what happens to the Green vote in some areas around the country. If they stick to their strict vax mandate position, which they officially have, that's not in tune with a lot of their voters. It's not. Because people who like to have kale and acai bowls sometimes don't really want other stuff going, organic matter going into their bodies either. And they're kind of on board. And I respect their choices. I've never cared if people want a latte or want a smoothie, or I don't care what you want. It's a free country and it should remain so.
Yeah, absolutely. But for a free country, it seems to be costing us a lot at the moment, especially. And it is really great to hear some sense of talking about freedom and trying to get us all a little bit pumped up about what we can do next, because it is, don't ask what the country can do, what you can do for the country kind of stuff, but it's about your family. It is still down to what suits you as an individual, what suits you and your family, your right to believe in things. And I even believe, people have the right to be stupid. You're allowed to make mistakes.
Well, just on this point too, one other point is, do people know a lady called Naomi Wolf? Some of you might remember her. Raving lefty, right? Raving lefty, hates capitalism, all this stuff. She's on our side on this. Might have seen that. I talked about the workers' rights issues. I support the CFMEU's court case against BHP, fighting against vax mandates. I support them. And this is where we are the majority, right? The real unionists out there who really care about workers' rights, they're on our side. The real greenies who want to protect their human body and not put foreign stuff in them and want to live an organic lifestyle, they're on our side. This is a massive majority. If we stick together, and fight this one, and we will take our country back if we do that. We just got to keep our axe to the grind, and we will make it.
And I think the more they keep telling you that you're anti-vax or you're anti-this or you're anti-that, when in fact what you're doing is you're saying you're pro-freedom, pro-Australia, pro-trust, pro-community, I think that the more, and so this is where the quiet Australian is, to the point of your narrative earlier in your great speech that you gave. When Lorraine and I walked in, we were so pleased to see you just getting put up on the stage. But the point here is that the more they try and label, the more it's going to aggravate all those groups that you're talking about. That is how the government, but the government's got to also understand there's a lesson out of this. The government is returned. I think if you end up with this is my personal view, you're all allowed your own, of course, because it's a free country. But if the current federal government is not returned and you end up with an alternative, you're going to have the Greens deciding exactly what Albo can or can't do. And our freedom will be lost. This will be a genuine call to arms that no matter whatever else people might happen to do, ensuring that Labor is last on a how to vote card is absolutely critical, in my opinion.
And can I just add to that you've seen a real world example of that in the last few months. I mean, it's no secret that I've been frustrated with the outcome of some of the negotiations around net zero. But what you saw happen was the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, the leader of the Liberal Party, to get to a position on this, he had to discuss this matter with the Nationals Party. And that led to some degree of handbrake on what was happening. In an alternative universe, ahead of, say, COP27 in some exotic place again, I think in Egypt.
It's in Egypt. It's going back to the Sphinx.
I can't remember the name of the place right now, but in Egypt next year, if we have an Anthony Albanese Prime Ministership, he won't be walking down the Nationals Party room. He'll be walking over to Adam Bandt in the Greens and asking him what he should take to Egypt. And then we will be signing up to agreements to restrict methane emissions and making farmers cull their cattle to meet our emissions target. We will be signing up to agreements which end the coal industry, and thousands of Australians will lose their livelihoods as a result. That's an outcome I do not want. Because whatever decision we ultimately made here in Australia, as I said before, I'm a bit sad because Glasgow was over, because the outcome was bloody good. It was bloody good. It was a huge win for the coal industry. Since Glasgow finished, China's gone back and said they're going to build coal-fired power stations. The Japanese Prime Minister has sacked a bunch of environmental greenies from his cabinet. They're shifting. They're changing course. Then this is my favourite. Well, actually, another favourite of mine. The German Greens was a headline the other day. German Greens want more Russian gas.
Just don't mention the war.
Yeah, well. And then there's another one, the Netherlands, another green country, signing up to all this stuff to end coal and fossil fuels and gas. They've just announced in the last week they're desperately trying to provide tax cuts to Shell to keep them headquartered in Amsterdam, the biggest oil company in the world, and they're giving them tax cuts. So we should never feel bullied by these hypocritical countries. I mean, that's one of the most frustrating things I've found, is we somehow here have this cultural cringe where we feel like we have to say these things and do these things because other countries won't like us if we do. Well, they have, just like these other high priests around us, these countries have no credibility to lecture us about what we should do on coal or gas or any of these things. And I'll paraphrase John Howard here, I agree with him. We should decide what we emit in this country and the circumstances in which we emit it.
Amen, brother. Amen. Look, it seems to mine that we have to very much so rally to the cause of deciding what sort of Australia we want. Every federal election is never for the faint-hearted, having held a marginal seat over 4 elections, and if Kevin 07 hadn't conned everybody sufficiently and he was in the seat next door to me, there might have been a chance that I could have held on. But John Howard and I both lost our seat in 2007. So I always sort of use that as a reckoner. But it's not about me lamenting about what it could have and would have and should have been, because you've got to find a new way to fight. You've got to find a new way to stand for stuff. And if Australia doesn't do what it wants, and people can criticise authorities in other countries for standing up for what they want, the Chinese example comes to mind, at least they're standing up for what they think's important to them, or them as a government anyway. That's all we need here. Glasgow proved that the whole thing was just simply a facade. It was a facilitator for a whole bunch of people. How many jets were there? 400. You were keeping account.
Well, I only counted those that went into the Glasgow International Airport because I do have a day job. But yeah, the winner was the King Air model. They got 12 of those. There was the Challengers. There was, it was a cavalcade. Apparently, the carbon emissions from Glasgow were double that of the previous conference. So
that's an achievement,
really. They continue to smash records. Good on them.
And I just want to just say, by way of thanks to Matt, thank God for the Glasgow Garbage Union, and thank God for the Glasgow train drivers. Both of them went out on strike ahead of Glasgow, and yet they still managed to stay there for about a month on per diems, in luxury hotels, playing golf in between sessions, discussing, how much of the climate they were going to repair by the finest honing, like that kettle chip ad. They were taking every word and just carving it. And they basically, all they really want, we find out at the end, is $1.3 trillion a year. Former finance minister would love that. $1.3 trillion a year from countries like ours to go via them to countries not like ours. Now, I don't think you're going to be any good to anybody if you're not strong yourself.
Don't forget Argentina. Argentina, they wanted to pay back their IMF debt with climate action.
Well, good on
Great.
Argentina.
I welcome that, because I'm going to pay my mortgage back with a couple more solar panels on my roof. that's I'm done. Sorry, Commonwealth Bank. That's the rules.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I know we're going to break now for a little while, then we're going to regroup. I acknowledge again Daisy Cousens. She's got to go to do Outsiders on Sky tomorrow. If you're not a subscriber to the Foxtel platform and watching Sky News, then you are not as informed as you should be. For heaven's sakes, friends, don't let friends watch or listen to their ABC. I've tweeted that so much, I just start writing friends and it just comes up as an automatic group of words. But I just simply want to say to you that it's up to each of us to commit to this in a way that makes us proud. Every time George gets on his feet, Matt gets on his feet, when Nick and Brett and I were in the parliament, every word you said went into the Hansard. Everything we said, every comment we made was written down. So we can't retreat from things we've said in the past unless we publicly say, well, we think something different, and you're allowed to do that. But I just simply say to you, if all of us do the sort of things to others as we would like them to do to us, present our case, put the case, challenge them to think about Australia, put the country first, forget all this internationalist claptrap, and don't trust the Greens or Labor Party with a vote, then I think we'll be okay. But it's over to you. I only get a vote. I just get one in each, the House and the Senate. So I do know people who multiple vote. Normally they vote for the other team. Some of them are people who've been dead for generations. No, well, I used to say to Laurie Ferguson, who was the former Labor Party member, and of course his brother Andrew was running the CFMEU over the road from Rookwood Cemetery, and I said, I think my great grandmother is a branch member of yours. He said, oh, she's in Rookwood. She is. I mean, they don't deny it. So we've just got to get ourselves clever, savvy, stylish, but we just got to win, because winning's a lot better than losing. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank a terrific Senator for Queensland, a terrific Australian, Matthew Canavan.
I would also ask all of you to thank a terrific warrior in the culture wars, one of those rare voices in the media that stands up for our values, the Honourable Gary Hargrave. And you know what? He's doing such a terrific job, and we do have a bit of a gap in the program at about 8:30. Who would like to hear Gary back on stage again? Your wife's your biggest fan, yes? And I did notice that one of our attendees got a ripping cheer when it was noted that he was available, or he was here in the room, and I suspect he might be available to join you on stage as well. Who would like to hear from George Christensen? You're on, George. Now, as Gary did mention, Daisy Cousens does need to rise at 2:30 in the morning to co-host Outsiders on Sky. But I've got her on good authority that her new husband, Callum, is very keen to stay. And I think Daisy might be persuaded if we could. Who would like to see Daisy Cousens on stage? What do you think, Daisy? Will you join us? Okay, we're taking that. All right. And we will invite Damian Coory. I don't know whether everyone knows Damian, but Damian's a very talented presenter and YouTube. But you should look up his channel, and he'll quarterback this cavalcade of what did you call them? Yeah, intolerance, whatever, hate. I think cavalcade of hate. I think Christina Keneally called anyone who attended the CPAC event. Damian will try and manage you. Matt and some of us are going to attend a dinner next door. For those of you that haven't managed to get a seat, please, there'll be some seats seats available, so you're welcome to take those. Look, I for myself, I'll be going next door as well. I just want to thank you very much for attending. Matt mentioned that it's time to take action. I will point out that the name of our organisation is the Conservative Political Action Network. And our key event every year is the Conservative Political Action Conference. It's all about action. And over the coming years, I hope to see you at these events, and we'll start running some programs where every one of us can take a little bit of an action, which individually may not be the greatest, but collectively we will make a difference. And I hope that we'll see you in years to come, and we'll be very proud of ourselves for being at events like this at the startup formation. And we'll look back and we'll think that we've done a ripping job and made a difference. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next one.
Well, we are going to be having some conversations with guests for the purpose of the live stream. We want to keep the conversation going in the room, but everybody can feel free and welcome to move around, mingle, go grab some drinks. If you're here, as the front tables vacate as people move to dinner, you can feel free to grab some of those seats that are vacated. But the service of food and drink will continue, and then the program on stage will resume at about 8:30. But right now, the conversation continues with Daisy Cousens and Damian Coory.
That was a nice spin you did there.
Pirouette.
Very exciting. Daisy, how good is Matt Canavan?
Matt Canavan is sensational. I didn't realise till tonight how funny he was. I haven't laughed that hard in a while. He's got a terrific sense of humour, brilliant comic timing, wonderful improvisation skills, and I think an all-around good guy and great politician. Really.
We need more people like Matt Canavan.
Oh, we do. I wish they were all like Matt Canavan. There are too many people in the coalition who I think have just sort of sold us down the river. They've capitulated to the left, which is the absolute worst thing conservative politicians can do, is capitulate to the left. Too many of them have done it, hence the kind of big government approach to COVID. They all need to draw inspiration from Matt Canavan and the others like him, because, yeah, he's fantastic.
Now, you've been very successful on YouTube, far more successful than I could ever hope to be. But gotta love that American audience. But tell me a little bit about the culture wars for you. Like, how did you get into it? How important do you think the culture wars are in reaching young people in particular?
I was something that I sort of fell into more than anything else. Yeah, I mean, I was not initially interested in politics, but I was always interested in people. And I think, like, interested in sort of how humanity works. And I think if you're interested in people, you'll find your way to politics and you'll find your way to culture, because it's all about people. And, you know, when I became interested in politics, I noticed that I had this inherent suspicion of people taxing me. Like, I'm basically a one-issue voter. I want to hang on to my money, you know, so I'll inevitably vote for people who aren't going to tax me. And I noticed in my 20s, so many of my left-wing friends were basically socialists, and they had all these sort of stray beliefs that just to me made absolutely no sense. I'm like, why do you want the government to take all your money and distribute it all over the place? And but the pushback that I gave to that was like, the reaction was so characteristically vile that was when I sort of first learned what the regressive left was. And, you know, when you move away from one social circle, you know, I went on Q&A after they caught some articles that I had written, and lost so many friends, as you do when they figure out you're a Trump supporter. You meet sort of new friends, and I learned more things, and I kept writing, and then I was very fortunate to be given some television opportunities, and the YouTube channel kind of stemmed from that. So that's how I got into it. But I think the culture war is so important in reaching young people, particularly Generation Z, you know, teenagers and people in their early 20s, because they are so plugged into the online sphere, like more than my generation, millennials, more than anyone. That's where they get all their information from. And the left is so clever in how they can manipulate the online sphere. They're so good at internet politicking. You've got politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I really can't stand, but she's so brilliant she's brilliant at social media. And it's why it was so annoying when poor Donald Trump had his Twitter account nuked, because he was the counter to that. But unfortunately, you know, he's not there anymore. But it is so important in reaching young people, because it deals with feelings and arts and emotions, and that's how you reach the idealistic youth. So conservatives, a lot of conservatives need to stop being so snobby about the culture wars. Like, they are important. That is how you interact with young people. And that's how we can shift this tide around, I think.
I'm Gen X. You're Gen Y. Do you think Gen Z are going to be more conservative than Gen Y or less conservative than Gen Y?
It's a really hard question. I mean, a few years ago, there were like marketing projections that Gen Z would be the most conservative generation since World War II. And it's like the left got wind of that and started working really hard to swing them, because since then, I've just noticed this like violent left-wing activism coming from Generation Z, and they're so noisy. And like I said, they're so great because they're great at social media. But then, you know, I go to events like this, and you know, on YouTube, there's a real groundswell of young conservatives as well. Like they're really, I did a YouTube video on it. Like, they're really nationalistic. They're fiscally conservative, a lot of them. A lot of them are sort of socially liberal but fiscally conservative, so there's sort of libertarian influence there. But there's a groundswell of them. As to how they'll turn out, I don't rightfully know. It might be one of those cases of people getting more conservative as they get older. That tends to happen with people. But there really is a strong right-wing influence in Gen Z that you don't see that much in the mainstream media.
Right. Okay. What do you think's next for the media in Australia? We're seeing the 9 group going a little bit left. We've got Channel 10 very left. We've got the ABC off the cliff left. Channel 7, I don't know where the hell they are. But it seems like the old media is shifting in that direction very heavily. And, you know, with don't want to put you on the spot about Sky, but Alan Jones leaving was not a happy thing. Where do you think it's all going in the traditional media or mainstream media space?
Well, the problem with a lot of mainstream media journalists is that they pay too much attention to Twitter. They pay way too much attention to Twitter because it's a lefty safe space. And because a lot of journalists, they are most of them are left wing, and they go to university in cities, they go through humanities departments and study journalism, which is very left wing, and they get pumped out straight into the press gallery in Canberra. Like it's a global thing where journalists are left wing, and because the Twitter algorithmically promotes a lot of leftist content. Their kind of confirmation bias, I think, gets in the way of their kind of truth-seeking ability. So if they've got a whole lot of comments that are in the affirmative to them pushing their left-wing echo chamber, it's so easy for them to mistake it as an accurate reflection of public opinion because it's making them feel warm and fuzzy. Although everyone agrees with me, well, this is all fine then. And that's why they've been so completely shocked at certain things like, the Trump election in 2016, the 2019 Scott Morrison election, Brexit. Even in 2020 in the US, they were shocked that Trump did so incredibly well when it comes to actually how many people voted for him. Because, if you paid attention to Twitter, they thought like 2 people would vote for Trump. You know what I mean? And I think it's that fixation with the online sphere that mainstream journalists have that is pushing them further and further and further to the left. And it really hurts journalism. Like it hurts it because I forgot, like someone was saying once upon a time, if journalists wanted public comment, they'd go out onto the street with their tape recorders, they talk to people, they get vexed. Now they go and do a search on Twitter and stick a couple of tweets in articles as if, oh, this person said that, so that's what the general public's thinking. That's not what the general public is thinking. So they get boxed into this bubble. I'm hoping that they'll start to realize at some point that actually it's not what people really think, but confirmation bias is a really tough thing to crack. And you have to be I try to be really conscious of mine in my commentary because you can really get stuck in that bubble if you're not careful.
That's right. And then the algorithm just puts you into an echo chamber.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. You just go down the rabbit hole and, it's never good to be around people who agree with you all the time. Like don't surround yourself with yes men. Like when I do my research for my videos and for TV, I do a lot of research. I spend days researching YouTube videos, as you should. It's the bare minimum. I always read from left to right. So I'll start reading opinion pieces in The Guardian and the Sydney Morning Herald and, even BuzzFeed, like as left as I can find. And then I'll move rightwards and I'll finish up with like Breitbart, for instance. But the point of the matter is I always expose myself to people I know will disagree with me first. I do it. That's the first thing I do. And through that process, what I do is I try to prove myself wrong. And that's why I start with left. If I can't prove myself wrong, then I think, okay, well, look, this is the thesis that I'll go with for the video. But you have to start when you're researching anything or you want to inform yourself, start with people who disagree with you. That's the only way to do it.
I'm so glad you're staying for a little while at 8:30. So very pleased considering you have to get up at 2:30. Really appreciate that. So, folks, Daisy Cousens will be with us on stage shortly. If you're watching at home, do stay with us and look forward to being back with you. David Pellowe, thank you, Daisy. David Pellowe is right behind me. What's
Debbie?
I'll
We're
leave it
gas
to you, my
bagging
friend.
away here.
We have a specky legend.
So we've got to turn it. You've got your back to the audience. That's our online audience there. It's a little robot camera. That's so wave. Everybody, let me introduce you to Debbie Newell, a famous spectator, one of Australia's.
An occasional spectator. I'm an occasional spectator, contributor, and I love the magazine.
So Debbie Newell, you recently submitted an article to Spectator, which didn't get up. So tell us about that.
Well, actually, I am pissed off, but I loved my title. It was called "The Hot Air Missing from the Glasgow Gas Bagging."
That is very good. The hot air missing from the Glasgow gas bagging. And what was the cut and thrust of the article?
Well, the article was all about the fact that I've had a major background in food and in farming. That everyone talks about methane, which is actually not a bad gas. It's, about not very much of the atmosphere. It turns around every 9 years. It doesn't do that. It doesn't warm that much. But there's another gas that all the cereals of the world produce. I call it the vegan flatulence. And the vegan flatulence is nitrous oxide. Now, the thing about nitrous oxide is it happens because we have synthetic fertilizers, NKP, and we have NKP fertilizers.
So what you're saying is we have to reduce the herds of vegans in Australia.
Absolutely. And the other ones were,
All vegans or just the morally superior ones?
I just think it's the biggest insult ever to science in the world was the food pyramid. Okay, it was a hoax, a total hoax. Harvard has quietly apologized for it, but never promoted the apology. So we grow a lot of cereals. Cereal agriculture destroys grasslands. We're the offspring. Homo sapiens are the offspring of grasslands, which are biodiverse places. So you go and destroy this, you put in cereals, you grow nitrous oxide, which is 310 times more warming than carbon dioxide.
Wow. And what other articles have gone really well on Spectator for you?
I got a front pager, which was my letter to Greta.
Sorry, say that again.
I got a Sarah Dudley did a front page, cover page, for my letter to Greta, which was saying, Greta, it was a very motherly letter. You may end up being embarrassed by when you grow up with your positions you're holding now. There's a lot of science here. I've done ones on temperature, global temperature. I don't have the scientific knowledge of Ian Plimer, but then Ian mightn't know as much as I do about food. I just have a look. Anyhow, I love writing for them. I love.
Debbie, let me ask you, politics in Australia right now, what's the shortcut to fixing it?
My basic thing is looking around the room tonight, and I might be being very generous to all of us. You're helping, but I would say the average age is 50. The biggest problem is we're not getting to the year 11, year 12s. We know that our universities are very woke. What many years ago, and I hope someone picks this up because I'm not going to do it anymore, but I registered a business called Intellectures to be like debates, to be delivered in universities. We need to give alternative opinions from very valid people at year 11 and year 12 level at schools.
So how do you think we reach year 11 and 12 people at schools?
Just
come back over this way.
I approached a couple of major schools in Brisbane. For instance, a school like Brisbane Girls Grammar School.
So do you want to get into the school hours, into the school curriculum?
It would be an after-school thing, parents and children, and you do a little bit like the Oxford Union debates, which are wonderful. We've had wonderful speakers here tonight. Matt Canavan knows how to address and speak. Humour, you can't have humour without brains, which is what Dan Anders.
We would need a lot of these kind of people to get around the number of schools there are.
You're going to find that you're going to probably have a few schools that kick it off, and then it will spread. If it's well received, so people come in and you have a series of debates. They don't have to be debates, but debate's a good idea.
Debates with students or debates with lefty adults?
No, debates from the...
Debates with the principal?
No, the debates are from people who know what they're talking about on stage. And they can be. I mean, I would stand up and debate a greenie. to say, no, you know, I understand a lot of where you're coming from, but you don't have it all right. I think you have to come and get a different set of opinions, and you're not going to get it from the school cohort at the moment. Hi.
I want you nearby for next.
Okay.
Oh, actually, you do. I'm sorry. You go. Sorry, Debbie.
That's right. So, anyhow, so that's basically the idea of what's that wonderful book? It's Clive Hamilton, The Hidden Hand. It's what Xi Jinping is doing in China. You get the young, you get them at school, you get the brains young, get them at years 11 and 12 when they should have some critical compass. And I believe stop thinking about the next election. We need to start thinking about how to create independent thinking. Above and beyond, Ita Buttrose flopping around on an ad on commercial television, pointing out that there is more osteoporosis than cervical cancer, when I don't know why she didn't pick on ingrown toenails.
What do you, like, if you want independent thinking, is there a hope for that actually happening in the Australia that has so popularly supported the abuses of government we've seen in the last 18 months? It seems to be a desert, a barren wasteland of independent thinking.
And that's, to be perfectly honest, we are losing our status as Homo sapiens. Sapiens meaning we're thinkers. So if we're Homo sapiens, we can think for ourselves, and somehow the only way I can see we can do that is, and media, it's been well put, and media is, forget the media. Well, you know, the mainstream media is a shocker. I'm not talking about, but you know, I'm anyhow. I mean, I refuse to turn on the ABC for anything, because every time you turn it on, they click the button, say that they're being supported. Enough.
Just a quick announcement for those in the room, ladies and gentlemen. If you are participating in the VIP dinner tonight, please do move across to the next room now, if that's okay. If you're participating in the dinner tonight, move across to the next room. Everybody else, please stay here. In about 5 minutes, we're going to be back on the stage with Gary Hargrave, George Christensen, and Daisy Cousens.
Oh, yes, it is definitely. 5 minutes to go.
I interrupted, David.
Mr. Barr.
The big dinner.
Or Mrs. Lindgren. I can see if I can find somebody else to talk to. Don't go away.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could just ask everybody to take a seat. We're going to get started on stage in just a couple of minutes. Maybe grab a drink and make your way back to your seats. Get comfortable, and we're going to move into the last session of the evening. And where is the great Mr. Christensen? I can't, the Honourable, can't see him. Come on in, George, wherever you are.
Well, we've got Alex with us for last comment before we go back to the stage tonight. We'll be going back to the stage in just a minute with Damian Coory from the other side hosting a session with Gary Hardgrave, George Christensen and Daisy Cousens. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, Alex, you were at the protest in town today. Apparently a few hundred people turned up.
Yeah. You couldn't count the people. It was probably 50 to 100,000. I tried just as they were walking past, count the number, then time them, and it just, 50 to 100.
So why did you go along today? Is there a particular aspect of politics that's making you unhappy today? What were you in particular protesting?
Oh, this whole no job, no jab, no job is just going a bit ridiculous. And the mandates, just the people have stopped thinking. They're thinking like children. Got to do something about it. And just seeing what sort of support they had, just trying to get a feel for the organisation down there. And they're really quite organised. People's Revolution. So they sort of kept it very, very focused just on the main issue. There were a lot of people trying to distract it onto different, strange little things, but they kept it very focused. A lot of strong support there. Yeah, so very good to see they're working.
Now, I don't know if you saw this, but I heard a rumour that some clown turned up with a noose to the protest, and they actually said, hey, put that away, go put that back in your car from the stage. Did you hear any of that at all?
I saw the guy with the noose, and he had a sort of hangman's balaclava on, and they had these, they call them guardians, all walking around, and they were trying to keep everyone sort of, a bit level-headed. There was another guy talking some other...
So guardians, they're like ushers?
Yeah, like ushers. Yeah, a lot of Indigenous guys, sort of a lot of Indigenous involvement with the movement. So, yeah, we'll see what comes of it. I don't know. I'm not endorsing it, but, yeah, they look like they're doing the right thing. But, yeah.
Brilliant. And so whereabouts are you living now, and what industry are you in?
So I just work for myself. We're farmers back in Victoria, so I keep in contact with my family, running the farm down there and doing my own thing up here a bit.
And how's all the COVID craziness, the overreach of government, the talk of mandates, how's that affected you and your industry?
So I don't know about the industry. Like the work sort of all carrying on the same. You have to, just distance everyone, keep your workers separate. The family and friends that I talk to down there, it's really having a big impact on their mental health, just being locked down and all the police everywhere. You talk to them on the phone, they're just different people. Yeah, it's having a big effect. So we really don't want to see that coming up to Queensland, that same police state thing. It's causing huge trouble. Yeah.
It shouldn't be anywhere in Australia. It's horrid. All right, well, we're just minutes away. Thanks, Alex. Just minutes away from going to Damian Coory and the panel on the stage. Stay with us and we'll be back shortly.
This is the world's tiniest stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please grab a drink, have a seat. This is going to be a very relaxed session. Come and join us. Those of you outside, you might want to come inside and have a sit down now if you're interested in joining us. So we're not talking to ourselves. That'd be great. Come on in. All right. This is the world's tiniest stage. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to all fit on it. So you guys have got one microphone. No, we only have 2 microphones and there's no social distancing going on here, I got to say. So you feel like you're 1.5 meters from me? It's more like 15 centimeters. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us tonight. My name is Damian Coory, and I'm a former radio and TV person from many, many moons ago. And I have returned to Australia in horror after 20 years in Asia, most of it in Hong Kong, watching communism destroy one of my favourite cities. I come home, I watch communism destroy another of my favourite cities, Melbourne. And I'm damned if I'm going to let it destroy the city of my birth, which is Brisbane. So we're fighting back and we're taking action, and that's what this is all about. And very happy to be here. I hope you all tune into The Other Side and to the Discernible platform. My show's called The Other Side. And also to the Good Source platform that David Pellowe does an enormous amount of work on. So there's a lot of people out there taking action on a cultural level. And I want to have a bit of a discussion tonight with these 3 fantastic people about that, about the cultural side of the fight. Because I think it was Andrew Breitbart who said, quite wisely, politics is
downstream from culture.
Yeah, politics is downstream from culture. So we have to change the culture. On that, I might start with you, Daisy, if that's okay, because you are the culture war queen of the millennial generation. I get all my letters mixed up. Why the heck not? Yeah. Okay. So, Daisy, the culture wars. Obviously, significant reason why you got into new media and doing what you do. For those of you who don't know, Daisy has 500,000.
No, not quite. About 205,000 subscribers.
Right, so about 205,000 times what I have. So I'm Generation X, so I'll take your lead and guidance. But tell us about how you got into it and why, and what your mission is.
Well, as I was saying to you in the live stream, I was mainly more interested in people than politics, actually, growing up, and in my 20s as well. Just get my age away. Yeah, I think if you're interested in people, you're going to be interested in politics, because politics is all about people, politics and culture and all of that. That's what's wonderful about it. And I always sort of found that I had vaguely different views from a lot of my friends, particularly growing up in the kind of musical theatre sort of community, which is what I initially wanted to do. They're all so sodding left wing. It's like the worst kind of SJW. I was exposed to them at a very young age. And so I have a first-hand view of just how they function. And I used to hate this kind of lockstep mentality. And I'm talking like 2012, 2013, before it all got really heated, the culture war. And any kind of pushback would just invite the most outrageously virulent, like mean reaction from people that you're supposedly really good friends with. And I used to think to myself, how can that be possible, that this person who I work with and we go out, we have a lovely time, is calling me the worst person since Hitler? Like, well, simply because I've said, actually, I just disagree with you. And like, it really struck me as odd. And it was my first kind of experience of what we call the regressive left. And I've always loved writing as well as performing, and I sort of moved further into the writing sphere for various reasons. I inevitably started writing about politics. I started writing for Quadrant magazine and for The Spectator. Quadrant, wonderful, so is The Spectator. And the ABC read a couple of my articles from The Spectator in late 2016. Yes, the heads did explode, and they actually asked me to be on Q&A. They asked me, and initially I couldn't do it. I had a dress rehearsal or something on that night. I thought, oh, thank Jesus, I don't have to do it. But then if they asked me again in early 2017, I thought, well, I've got no excuse this time. I'm going to have to do it. So that was my first ever experience of live panel television, was Q&A on the ABC. a couple of months after Trump won the 2016 election, and they hosted the show in Melbourne. And I remember looking out at the audience, and there were these, young millennials in the front row, and I was saying, oh, I like Trump because I agree with his policy on this, that, and the other. And there were these people in the front row going, literally that facial expression. And I thought, my life's never going to be the same. Never going to be the same. And yes, lost a lot of friends that night for that same reason. It's just people you've been friends with for 10 years.
Yeah.
Just go, no. And yeah, so it all just sort of went from there. And it was that, I'll shut up in a minute. I'm nearly done. But it was that really got me interested. I'm like, why are people so intent on stopping people from having different opinions? Like, why do they shame and this irritating group of quite stupid people a lot of the time think they're so smart that no one else should be allowed to have an opinion? And that's what inspired me to kind of keep going. Frustration and hatred. They're not bad motivators.
How do you think we're doing as conservatives influencing Generation Y and Generation Z? And what do we need to do better might be a better way of phrasing that question. What do we need to do better to influence the younger generations?
I hate to say that the millennials, my generation, are kind of a lost cause. I think the millennials in this room will probably agree with me. I am constantly apologizing for my generation, where a lot of us are just, not all of us, but most of us are just a sorry bunch. It was because probably we were going through university at a time when I don't think conservatives realized just how virulent that kind of Marxist strain is in culture. But by the time they realized, it was too late. The millennials were just being pumped out with these strange views. But the Zoomers, I think, are a different kettle of fish. Like, they're very, very noisily, violently left in their views a lot of the time. But there's this real undercurrent of sort of fiscally conservative, nationalistic, but socially liberal views, which is a really interesting mix. I made a YouTube video on Gen Z a little while ago, and that was kind of what I found in my research. And because they're so internet savvy, they have access to all of this information that millennials just didn't have because it didn't exist, let alone older generations. So I think they're easier to kind of influence than millennials are. As to how conservatives are doing, probably better than we did with the millennials. So I think it's good. There are a lot of young conservative commentators out there. I think that helps. So I think we just need to keep pushing away at the Zoomers, because the millennials, sadly,
are a lost cause, you
think?
All right.
But the Zoomers are good.
Yeah.
I love Zoomers. They're great.
Gary, you've had a long career in the media, not to sort of age either of us too much, but I remember meeting you as a young fella at 4BC back in the day. It was 4BK, maybe. You were at 4BK before it was B105. So what's your view as a wise media elder of where the media is going today in Australia? It seems to be shifting quite left. We've seen Alan Jones, whether he resigned or he was pushed. The point is that they needed to make way for peers, and it does seem like we've seen Channel 9 going very left wing with 2GB and the network, the 3AW 4BC network. Are we in a situation where the media is looking at the landscape and saying the only way we're going to rate is if we move left?
Look,
is there hope?
I think there's not enough voices in the media, and yes, I am retained to do some work for Sky, as indeed Daisy is. So I'll simply say Sky is
sorry about that.
Sky is the hope of the side when it comes to broadcast media, because there at least are a range of voices on Sky across the day, from morning through to late at night. There are a range of voices. Yeah. We're not hearing that range of voices. And look, I'm 62 in a couple of weeks, apparently. Did I say that? It's true. And but I have been around Brisbane media since 1974. The late David Jull took me under his wing, and he was the first face on Channel 10, or Channel O as it was in his day, a broadcast journalist. And Jully taught me a lot of things about attitudes and listening to the range of views that are out there. But media was, and still is, I believe, a noble pursuit. But journalism, by definition, is one who keeps a journal. And I remember Bob Hawke once said that, we decide who the heroes are. Okay, we write the history, we work out who the heroes are. And he said that. And I think that, God rest his soul, I think it's reasonable to say that modern day journos don't actually understand that they are ignoring big chunks of the reality of today in a lot of their reporting. And there is not so much a left media, but a lazy media. Queensland's a great example. The Queensland Premier has 30 advisors in her own office. Now, one of them carries her shoes. I'm not joking. One of them attends to her makeup and grooming, and at least one other drives people around, her family and things like that. Now, if I've said that on television, I'll say it here again tonight. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to see a list of them, and they're all vaccinated, I'm sure. So I just simply make the, and I know it's not my business if they are or aren't, but I just simply make the point that every senior journo in Brisbane in the last 20 years has ended up being offered a gig with them, or has been told that they won't toe the line, so therefore there's no place for them there. Yeah. The story is repeated in state governments right across the country. So there are hundreds of people who had mentored people who became senior journos who are now in a position to say, oh no, this is the real story, don't worry about that. So you turn on the 6 o'clock news, which I do out of habit, and I won't mention the network. I used to work for one of them, the 7 Network, but it is, well, I did, I used to do a kids show called Wombat in 1979 through to 82, and then I went on to Big People's TV, and I don't apologise for that. Wombat was a terrific award-winning program, and I learned a lot about the craft. But I simply say that we've now got so many people who are just reliant on what they're told by these spin doctors all around the country. And it's wrong, because it's reasonable to ask questions. It's reasonable to test that theory. And I've had people who are experienced in the media say to me, oh, I'm unbiased, I'm in the media. And I said, oh, please. Seriously, I want you to be biased, because what you're saying, if you say you're unbiased, it means you have no values. You've got to have values. Yeah. You've got to bring, and even if your values are approved, sorry, the view you have formed out of your values is proved wrong, that's okay. Because if you're confident enough about who you are, what you believe, and what your values are, you're not going to be threatened by people with other views, with other values. I don't understand why it is we've all got to be washed into this vanilla kind of codified, structured, everybody must think the same. And oh, by the way, everybody must be offended on behalf of everybody else. That's the biggest growth industry in Australia, by the way. The people who want to be offended on behalf of others. You know, when George speaks in the Parliament, when I spoke in the Parliament, we take responsibility for our words. We own them. When I open my trap on Sky, and Daisy will do that tomorrow morning at 2:30, really? Is that right? Anyway.
She gets up early to
wake
prepare.
Up. Wow, heavens above. Callum will be mowing the lawn at 4:30. So, but I just say, you know, whatever you do, you've got to take responsibility. What is wrong with personal responsibility? You know, what is wrong with that?
Well,
sorry, the one last point I'll make, Damian, and you're a practiced media hand. I've been seeing a number of people who've come through the Sky ranks and gone on to do other jobs in other places, and I've said to them in a kind of mentoring role, I said, if I ever hear you report, this is unprecedented, just because you've never seen it before doesn't make it unprecedented. In other words, question, are we really being told the truth? Question, has it happened before? Oh, by the way, I just want to share with you, climate has been changing for millions of years.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, so Look, I mean, my time at the ABC was, an experience in the 80s, and I was mentored by very smart people, and we had adults in the room, and I was even a bit of a lefty back then, and the bias goes in, and then the older people in the room would turn around and say, slap you down, son. And I often say now we've just got an ABC full of ex-Triple J 1980s people who can't find the exit, or haven't yet found the exit.
Wouldn't you like the caftan concession there? Wouldn't you like to be able to sell caftans and stuff?
Yes, I would love to have somebody hand me $1 billion for a media network, and we could get Daisy on, and David and everybody else. George, so my question to you is to start off. Sorry. Ask Trump. Okay, I'll put that down. I'm sure he'll listen to me. But George, why do you think? Because we hear Senator James McGrath, we hear Senator Scarr, we hear lots of people in the Liberal Party saying we have to reform the ABC. We've got to reform the ABC. Why wasn't it the first thing that we did when we won the last election, the day after the election? Why the cowardice? Well, not a leading question at all there, sorry.
You've asked a blunt question, I'll give you a blunt answer, because there's obviously no cojones within the coalition on that front. And that's the reality. There have been many opportunities in which the ABC could have been dealt with. There have been many different incidents, and I hear noise, but I don't see any action from Conservative governments. The last Conservative government that tried to do something about it was the government you were in, when they put the chairman of the board there.
Jonathan Shire was
yes.
Not as in from the Shire, but Jonathan Shire.
Yes. I mean, the lesson from that, some people have walked away and saying, oh, well, it's hopeless, you can't fix the ABC, Howard tried it and failed. But I think that the lesson from that wasn't that he tried and failed, is that he didn't go hard enough. And that's what needs to happen with the ABC. At the moment, there's a great IPA podcast that's out. If you haven't listened to it, have a listen to it. It's called Their ABC. And the name just says it all. It is their ABC. It is the left-wing ABC. There was a famous poll that was out many moons ago where I don't know how they fell for it, but someone went through and asked all these journalists at the ABC who they voted for. And it was the Greens had such a disproportionate vote within the ABC in comparison to the Australian public. You just know these people are completely out of step. And, they're a cultural institution in this country. They influence people. John Howard used to say, it's our enemies talking to our friends. And that's what it is. But I think that actually there's been a shift from that. There's a lot of people that have tuned off the ABC and have gone on to Sky News, particularly now that they can get it in the regional areas free to air. But something needs to be done. I proposed this when Malcolm Turnbull was communications minister, so it had a snowflake's chance in hell of ever getting up. But I said to him that they always talk about, you're going to privatise the ABC or scrap the ABC. We don't need to do that. It's a government service. Like all government services, let's put it out to tender. Let's put it out to tender. I mean, Rupert Murdoch might put a great bid in to actually run the ABC very efficiently, very effectively, and he might make it a bit more of a ratings winner by being less left.
Yep. Well, do have a listen to, very good. Do have a listen to the podcast there, ABC. It's Evan Mulholland from the IPA who's put that together. I think it's going to be a 6-part series. And there's an excellent overview. I've done an interview with Evan that's on the other side on Wednesday night. So please join us for that. I'm going to turn over to the room now. So I'm going to just get a little bit. I know this stage is so spacious, so I know you guys are going to feel like you now have so much room. So feel free to move over a little, Gary. I'm going to play Phil Donahue for those who are in my age group. It'll be Oprah Winfrey. Who would like to ask a question of one of our 3 very special guests here? Come back to you, Deb.
Cheers, guys. We're all here because we have a common interest, and today was a magnificent episode in Australia's history, in Queensland's history. Today I saw the biggest mass movement in a rally in my life. I'm 72 years old, and I'm proud to be one of them. I really only ask for everyone who was involved at the Botanical Gardens or in that rally to put their hands up now. Wow. Well done, guys. Well done. No, that's it. That was it. Well done.
All right. I'd prefer if you have a question. Okay, but that was great. Thank you, sir. Debbie. Jill. Gee. Sorry.
I do remember. I did say this previously to George that lots of people went to the rally. I know they went to the rally in Brisbane. They went to the rally in Gympie. I've got friends in Gympie. Lots of rallies, and a lot of people are saying that they want to wipe out the major parties. And I do understand why, because they feel that they're being run by the elites, they're being run by the United Nations, all of this sort of stuff. But I don't want, my question is, can I say what I want and don't want? Can I? Okay.
It's a free country still.
Oh, thank you, Gary. And I do watch you on Sky. I do. But my major concern is, I want freedom as well, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I'm an old fart that hasn't been vaxxed yet. Because I am waiting for something that I think might suit me better. So if I have to be at home, hang on, I'm talking about myself. Sorry. No. My question is...
Daisy has to get up at 2:30.
No, I'm sorry, Daisy. Now, my question is that the Pauline Hanson party, I've written it down. The Liberal Democrats and Clive Palmer. The three of them, they've got their big major parties. And I believe that they will all join forces. They may not become one party. I mentioned this to George before. They may not become one party, but they will all vote one after the other. So they'll all vote for each other. And that's what this whole thing is about, the two-party system. Or shall I say three, I don't know, the Greens, wherever they are, down the bottom, I hope. However, the question is, sorry.
That's all right. It's okay, Jill. It's good. It's very entertaining, but we've got three great people up here.
I know. Well, what is it? What happens if these three minor parties go 1, 2, 3? Where does the LNP sit in all of this? Because, pardon?
Sorry, no. Go ahead.
4? Yeah. LNP, what? 4?
Would be 4. I was joking. It was a
joke.
No,
I can't.
Okay. So the question, maybe George should take that one.
Please. No, it's not that the three will become one.
Yep.
It's if all of them vote for each other, like their preferences.
Yes, preferences. Yep. George, I think George has got it. You got it, Jill. Fantastic.
So thanks very much. Great question. So some people are right in thinking that we probably need a bit of a kick in the pants in the Liberal National Party to do better, and they are probably out there thinking, I'll vote for the United Australia Party, or I'll vote for Pauline Hanson's One Nation, or I'll vote for Katter's Australia Party, or the myriad of other minor parties that are out there, the Liberal Democrats. I do not think, though, that given the voting patterns of the Australian public, that it is going to be something that's going to upset the system much. On the fringes, it might. In the Senate, it always does, and that's going to be a problem. and what you're saying, I think, is going to come alive in the Senate. So the idea of these three parties, or four, whether it's Katter, Pauline, the Lib Dems, and Clive Palmer's party, all joining forces. I don't think that's ever going to happen because with Palmer and with Katter and with Hanson, you have very big personalities who I just don't think are going to play well under the one roof. But the idea you're talking about of if all of their voters preference each other, that can play out in the Senate. And it's going to be much more difficult now, though, because the voters have the choice. Once upon a time, you just put the number you wanted above the line and the party sorted out where the preferences go. Now you have to individually sort out where they go. And that's going to make things more difficult. But look, I mean, you're asking me to crystal ball gaze. I don't know if anyone else wants to do that. I think that yes, there is going to be leakage to these minor parties to give us a kick in the pants because we haven't stood up on COVID until now. I mean, let me just, I'm going to get in trouble for this, I don't care. Where's David Crisafulli on these pandemic restrictions? If I was the leader of the opposition, I would have been on the stage today supporting all of these people who are protesting. And, you know, it's great. We've had ScoMo come out just this week saying that, look, governments now need to back off and people need their freedoms back. That should have been said long ago, but that's been said now. That's great. It needs to be followed up with action. So people actually don't go and vote for these minor parties. Only if we have ScoMo up there following through on the commentary that he has made, is it going to stop that sort of drift off? Well, mate, I'm well, that's fine, but mate, I've said what he said. I've said what he said. What I'm saying to you is it now needs to be followed up with action. And the action can be simple as this. The Commonwealth actually controls the data that's going to state governments through the Australian Immunisation Register. The Commonwealth could flick the switch off if they want to. And that is what's got to happen to stop this drift off to minor parties.
Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I think the key thing to remember is that you should not walk away from communicating your view to your local member. One of the things I always found incredibly frustrating, and I remember holding a rally of all the candidates for election, I think it might have been 2004, it doesn't matter, whenever it was, at the Annalie Maruka Senior Citizens Hall. Lovely venue. They're all up there. Some person we'd never seen anywhere doing anything wandered in. Apparently she was the Greens candidate. I think she's a Greens senator for Queensland now, but it doesn't matter. But nevertheless, they were raving on about felling of trees up in Cape York and all of these things. I said, well, look, the biggest environment problems in Moreton are the creeks and the waterways. Look, I don't want to see trees chopped down either, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, great. But listen, come and see me after the election because I'm actually right now physically, emotionally, intellectually engaged on the business of trying to stay in office. The time in which you should put me to work is immediately after the election. And I'm still waiting for her to come and see me, but nevertheless, the point I make is this, that if you're angry with a political party, join it. Actually get involved. If you're angry with the direction the government is taking, go and communicate it to your local member. And if you're not fortunate enough to live in a seat that's held by the Liberal Party or the National Party, go and talk to a senator, put them to work. Because senators, and Matt Canavan's an exception, there's a number of other good ones in Queensland that are exceptions, but senators are often easily confused when they see a constituent because it's not what they regularly expect. That's all right. I worked with the senator, and I used to drop exactly the same joke. You know, there's a picture in the picture dictionary under the words irretrievably lost. You know, under the word "lost" is a photo of a constituent sitting in a senator's office. But look, seriously, go and put them to work. I can understand you can say, "Oh, the Prime Minister's this and the Prime Minister's that, and you guys are useless." But what have you done about it? Why don't you go and actually challenge them to understand that you'll vote for them, but you expect to see action on this? And if they don't deliver, then you won't vote for them again. Just go and tell them that before the election. That might affect some change.
Yep. Go ahead. Why not? Okay, you can jump the queue if you keep it to 30 seconds.
How are you?
I'm very well, sir. Thank you.
Now, George really knows what I'm talking about here, because George and myself have been dealing for a lot of years in Airlie Beach in the Whitsundays. Now, George knows me 100%. I've always been a Liberal National Party person. Always, right? I was born in a Liberal business, if you like. My father in Melbourne. Laminex Industries, I mean, all the way through. We were engineering style people, if you like, with German descent that just wanted to move forward. Volkswagens, the first Volkswagens into bloody Queensland, the three-legged racers from Hacks Motors, right? Now, the problem is that we don't get people listening, as we've just been talking about. We talk about...
All of that. We've got people listening at home. They have to hear.
Am I too loud?
But I need you to be quick. So, because I've got about 4 other people that want to ask a question. I love what you're saying, but...
Is that it's absolutely critical. We're not...
Let me hold this. Quickly, give me your question. Your point. Make your point, because I think you want to make a point.
My point is that George understands where I've been coming from for a lot of years. I'm 100% a Liberal national person.
But you're saying now...
Now I'm saying, right, I don't like repeating myself, but...
Just quickly, in short, concise soundbite form would be great.
That is the people that are so biased about the opposition or whatever, if it's...
Sorry, no, he was just moving your wine glass, but we'll come back to you. Hold that thought. I'll come back. You've been very patient, sir. Thank you.
Hi, Gary, Daisy, and George. Hi. I just got a really brief question. News poll, I think, whether you believe it or not, they show support for minor parties is at an all-time high. But the Liberal Party don't seem too concerned, because everyone who's in this room, probably, anyone who is in this room will vote for the UAP, the LDP, my vote for One Nation, but they'll always put the Liberals above Labor, which is what matters in the lower house. So my question is that in terms of how do we keep the Liberal Party more conservative, do we need some kind of electoral reform, i.e. optional voting, optional preferential? What's your view on that?
Great question. Almost died. Yes, of course. No problem. Don't you worry about that. There you go.
Thank you very much. Well, look, I think you elect the entire British Parliament on a first-past-the-post basis. And I tend to think that that is a form of reform that should be seriously considered. The Queensland Parliament, to the great shame of the Australian Labor Party, 100 years ago next year, abolished the Legislative Council. And I think we should have it returned in Queensland. And I'll tell you right now, it's simple. You actually just have 2 state members per federal seat, and then you have an upper house with 2 state senators per federal senator, so you have 24. So you actually have a parliament of 84 that'll operate better across 2 houses. But look, that's just my personal long-held view. I just think that first past the post voting may well be the answer. But if you want to talk about reform, the serious reform that needs to be happening is there's no good moaning and groaning about how hopeless this member is or that member is or this political party this or this political party that. And I'll let you in on a secret. I voted in every election for the Liberal Party, even though I got expelled from it a few years ago, but that's okay. All is forgiven. We move on. But I still vote for them because I do believe in my heart of hearts that the potential for the core principles of trusting individuals, rewarding effort, is a lot better than a socialist pathway, to quote the great Bronwyn Kathleen Bishop. And it's as simple as that. So you can exercise your vote and put whatever minor party you like, but like gender, I'm going to go to hell for this now, like gender, politics is binary.
Yep. Greens last, Labor second last, everybody else above that, that's fine.
Yeah, hi, my name's Peter. Problem is when you go around all the questions, half my question tend to be asked, I suppose. But what I've seen happen over the last several years, and I'm a 3rd or 4th generation Conservative voter, but a few years ago, the Conservative bus took a very hard turn left, caught up to and then passed the ALP bus. And, I look back in horror. I see what, Slow-Mo did by outspending Rudd with his stimulus package by a magnitude of 8. I've seen his backflip on a whole lot of things like coal. Granted, Glasgow wasn't as bad as we thought. Now, I can appreciate that some of you, you're in the bus, you're up against the back window, you're banging against it and you're screaming out, you're saying we're going the wrong way. But a lot of us are stranded on the edge of the road. And you're saying go and join the local branch and that. But I know people who've been to the local member, Conservative member, they don't get a hearing. And I actually really wonder, are we better off to have a situation like the US? Get Biden for 12 months, just see how bad it really is to motivate people.
Do you want to respond to that, George? Or no? Okay, all right. I've got somebody over here who's been waiting patiently.
Oh, sorry, George is going to...
I'll respond to that, George, if you'd like to. Yes, thank you.
I'll get in trouble again. But look, the last thing you would wish on the country is a destructive left-wing, green-tinged government. So I would never, ever wish for that. But I do wish that those of us who are either pushed up against the window and of the back of the bus or have been flung out the window, we're back and we're back up around the driver's seat. And that's what's going to happen. I said a while ago that I believe politics is broken in Australia. And I think that it is actually, that we have, there is such a disconnect from grassroots LNP branches through to members of parliament and senators, and even from members in parliament and senators through to the cabinet table, through to the Prime Minister. And that same thing could probably be replicated when it comes to state politics as well. There is just such a disconnect. And I don't know exactly how to fix that problem, but I know that the only way that it can be fixed is by staying involved in politics. Now, some people, and I'm not going to say to them, don't do it. Some people might say, well, I've tried it here, it don't work. I'm going to go over here and try to be an agitator on the other side of the equation. Thanks, Doug. Okay, thank you, right. Thank you. Good luck to them if they do want to do that, because I think it takes different horses for different courses. And if we have Conservatives in the Liberal National Party trying to veer that party back to the right, that's great. If we have Conservatives in minor parties that are trying to do their thing in that part of the world, that's great too.
Thanks, George. Okay, we've got one more question here.
Okay. Gary, I totally agree with your comments that politics is binary, and we have a system of government in this country where there's two major parties that form the government. There might be smaller parties that hold the balance of power in the Senate. In Queensland, as you said, we've got a unicameral parliament. That's difficult for smaller parties to hold the balance of power here. But I'd just like to endorse what you said, that that if we're frustrated about the major party of government on the right, that we really ought to be, if we're not already, joining that party. And as more conservatives join the major party of government on the right, it becomes more conservative, believe it or not. And so instead of conservatives leaving the party, we ought to be encouraging our friends who hold our values, the same values we do, to join it and to put it back on track. And would the panel agree with that?
I actually really hate to interrupt this, but I'm actually going to have to go home to bed because I have to get up at 2:30 in the morning.
When you did.
That's okay. I might hand it over to Gary now.
Daisy One Kenobi, go and have sweet dreams. Daisy is Brisbane's answer to Rita Panahi, and and I've never met Rita, but Daisy is hosting Outsiders instead of Rita tomorrow. So, well, she's filling in with Rowan, and I think, of course, she will do very, very well. So please go and have some rest, Daisy. We'll be all watching.
Thank you very much, Daisy Cousens and Callum. Also, thank you for joining us tonight, guys.
Look,
and
as Daisy leaves, one of the key things I was told years ago, and George will have his own mentors, but I had a lot of different people around the Liberal Party told me things years ago. John Collington Moore, the former member for Ryan, John told me a long time ago, and I don't care what anyone thinks about John, he was a great minister. He gave the best answer I ever heard in the federal parliament when they asked him this long-winded question about defence policy. He got up and he said, well, the government's position is well known, and sat down. It was absolutely a brilliant answer. The Prime Minister, John Howard, wasn't happy. But Moore told me, he said, if you're not prepared to stand for something, then, of course, you want to always win. So in other words, put it around the other way. Yes, thanks, Daisy. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye. In other words, if in politics you have a view and you put it and you lose the argument and you don't ever want to lose, then the chances are you'll have no argument. You'll never want to stand for anything. So you've got to be prepared to sometimes lose an argument. But if the argument's never mounted, never put, then the people who show up make the decision. So it's no good grouching about how a political party's operating if you're not actually involved in it in some way, shape or form. That's my take on it. There's a gentleman way over there as well. But yes.
Hi. This is a little bit of in memoriam. I'm a proper conservative. I used to vote National Party. And National Party's conservatism was blended down when it became LNP. Now, I'm just going to address the two of you up there about, I thought Joe Bjelke-Petersen was pretty clever, smart, astute. And can we imagine, I'd like the two of you to answer this, where Queensland's intellectual property would be these days if Joe's suggestion, which came from an engineer, of developing the hydrogen car would make Queensland probably one of the richest organisations now in the world, because that was absolutely rubbished. That was what, 35 years ago, the concept of the hydrogen car, and here we are again. What do you guys reckon?
It was 36, 37 years ago, because I was working for Channel 7's current affairs program, State Affair, and I remember a colleague of mine standing beside the petrol intake of a car with a glass of water saying, this is what you need to drive the car. The whole thing was lampooned, not understood. And let's face it, hydrogen electricity is, in theory, in a beaker, certainly very possible. It takes a massive amount of electricity. The only way you can do that is a whole bunch of stuff in Georgia's electric gets dug out of the ground and is converted into electricity. So hydrogen only works if you've got a lot of baseload power to actually break the atoms of H2O into 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. So that's my thesis. However, I've sat in on a lot of conversations with people who are very optimistic and excited about it. Now, with regards to Joe had lots of my last conversation with Joe Bjelke-Petersen was in 1998 when he attended the Liberal Party fundraiser for Fazal Dean, who ran for the state seat of Archerfield. I've got his autograph on a Dean Brothers hat that night. And I said to Joe, what went wrong? I said, I used to love some of the stuff you did and used to hate some of it. He said, don't you worry about that. And I said, all of these people that caused your legacy to be so maligned, he said, under tall trees grow weeds. That's what he told me. So I'm not sending him up. I'm just telling you what he said. He brought a huge amount of difference to Queensland. No one has ever been quite like him since. But he also had the ambition for Queensland that is absent now. There is no ambition for Queensland in the current Queensland government, no ambition at all. No one can tell me what this Queensland government's actually done, let alone what they actually want to do next. That's what's missing.
They've saved us, mate.
Oh, they've saved us.
Saved us.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go to. That
I've
man
only
at
got
the
time for
back
2
has been-
final questions. So one here and one there because you've been waiting patiently. Here we go.
My question relates to the lack of fuel security in terms of defence. Senator Jim Molan said quite a long time ago that Australia only had 21 days or 17 days of fuel. So in the event of a conflict, we will run out of fuel for our jet fighters and our tanks and our trucks and our defence equipment. Why has this government failed for so long to adopt what the American government has, a strategic reserve policy? They have 6 months of crude oil, they have 20,000 tonnes of cobalt, 100,000 tonnes of... They have a strategic reserve policy, but we don't have a policy and we could run out of fuel within 3 weeks.
Well, we could, but and thanks, Lex, for that question, but Australia's strategic reserves are actually being held in America in their strategic reserves. So I can assure... Well, it may or may not be, but that... Well, what do you mean? If the war breaks out, we'll be making tea for them by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, look, I think we just need to understand that wars don't just break out instantly. And if they do, then the capacity of the Americans to deliver the fuel that would be needed in the event of that should not be underestimated. And I don't think either George or I have the, with respect to George and myself, have the capacity to fully understand the operational issues that underpin what I'm just saying to you. I think we just, well, I hope I'm right too, but I'm willing to back the fact that there is a strategic reason for strategic reserves in America, well guarded, well maintained, well sustained, to be Australia's strategic reserves as well. I think it's our partnership with America that makes a difference.
The only thing that I would add to that is that there is a move to put more fuel, more strategic reserves in Australia. We do have that capacity in the US at the moment, but I know that Angus Taylor has been moving to have more fuel supplies here in situ. Now, the problem that I think perennially is there on this issue, whether it's a Labor government or a Liberal government, the Department of Industry bureaucrats, I am advised, are just vehemently against this sort of idea that we need some build-up of oil here in the country that's going to protect us in the event of a war. I think that probably is misguided, listening to those guys too much. I suspect that Angus hasn't been listening to him, which is why that he's moving to get reserves in the country. So that is happening, probably not to the extent that it needs to happen. I think that there's international requirements that actually say you should have about 90 days. We, the department, will say that, well, we're meeting that because we can get it from over here. But that really, you're right, if there are shipping channels that are cut off, you're not going to get it. So it needs to be in situ.
Thank you very much. On what basis can the LNP hold itself to be truly conservative when it's rolled on every significant social, cultural, and financial conservative position in the last 2 generations? And secondly, why is the Queensland LNP such a bunch of ballless sticks?
I was asking him to come to you, and then there was that question. Well, look.
Maybe if you want to just take the first question, George, that's fine.
I will. You can take the second one, Gary. Well, look, I still think that there's elements of conservatism in the Liberal National Party. Now, even federally, the Liberal Party will say that they're a big tent. They're not a conservative party per se. The LNP, being a division of the Liberal Party, is in the same mold. There's libertarians, there's classical liberals, there's people who call themselves modern liberals now. And there are conservatives of different persuasions in the LNP. You have people like Matt Canavan, people like Jared Rennick, people like myself. You've had people like Joe Lindgren. You've got many people who are willing to stand up on the issues that matter. But you're right, there needs to be more of us. So those, what was it that you called them? Yeah. So those other types don't get in.
Yeah, oh, that's sort of, I love you all, I guess, really. Look, decisions are made by those who turn up. The range of views have always been there. And the broad church that Menzies imagined back in what was it, 1943, when that was all sort of pulled together, I think the only criticism I have is that the kneelers in the pew have been pushed down the right end, so everyone's had to shift somewhat along the pew to the left. It seems like they are the fun crowd, the left. That seems to be this laziness that I was talking about earlier in the media has kind of entered into politics. And sometimes the stuff you've got to do is the stuff that you're prepared to lose over, even though you know it's got to be said, it's got to be put, the view has got to be put. And, you know, there's going to be a vote for a new speaker on Tuesday. There'll be a number of people contesting it. And each of them should be congratulated for putting their name forward. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. But it's not just simply about a position like that. It's purely about a point of principle, a point of values that people think are important. And if you're going to shrink away because you don't want people to say, oh, he was wrong, then what are you there for? I can say to this room, and you can make of this what you like, that in 1996, when Kevin Andrews brought about a bill to stop euthanasia in the Northern Territory, I was one of 34 people that voted against the bill. I understand why I voted against the bill, because I believe that the Northern Territory Parliament had the right to make laws, full stop. And then everything else after that was simply an explanatory to the principal statement, which is the Northern Territory did not have the right to make laws. That's what Kevin's bill was. So I voted against it. And being 34 people, you have John Howard, Kim Beasley, just about everybody over there. I think it was Peter Reith, I think, Anthony Albanese, Peter Reith and I sat together. It was a pretty odd group. And I don't apologise for my view on that, because I just felt that, and I'm personally against this euthanasia stuff that's been going on in Queensland. It's my personal view. And if I was in the Queensland Parliament, I would have voted against that particular law. I'm also against all that late-term abortion rubbish that they're doing, but that's my personal view. I don't care what anybody thinks. That's my personal view, and I'm being honest enough to tell you that. I don't like where we've become really good at killing off the vulnerable, both at the beginning and the end of life. I just don't like that. I really don't. But
okay, Gary, I want to just get sorry, Gary, make your final point.
But I voted in a way that people would think that I was in favour of euthanasia, when in fact I'm not. But I voted against it because I thought the principle of telling a parliament what to do by another parliament was wrong. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take two more quick ones because we'll just have ladies first, and then I'll come over to this gentleman over here who's been waiting very patiently.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is I didn't leave the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party left me. After 35 years of voting for the Liberal Party, this will be my first federal election where I won't be voting Liberal. I won't be voting for the LNP. Breaks my heart, but I can't in all good conscience vote for a party that has completely decimated our freedoms from a federal level. Scott Morrison, where is he? I am disappointed in my two. Look, it was either Bill Shorten or Scott Morrison, and my God, could you imagine us going through this right now with Bill Shorten at the helm? So I voted for someone that I believed in, and unfortunately he has let this country down big time. George. Yeah.
Sorry. Are you worried about the impact that it might have on, and this is probably something we need to discuss just very quickly, what's going to happen with the current political environment if we see Anthony Albanese win as a result of the fact that we fractured the right?
So my view on this is that it doesn't matter who is voted in as the PM. What happens in the Senate and the House of Representatives is really where we stand to gain something back. It is absolutely profound to me that the federal government has no recourse over the state governments in this country. They are just running rampant over us as people in this country. But my question actually is, George, are you really going to quit Parliament?
Well, that was quite a build-up to the question. And after all of what you said, I'd probably have to have rocks in my head to run again. The reality is no, and I think that that what you have said should make a lot of people in the LNP very, very nervous. And it means that there's more that has to be done. And it means that the direction that we're going down as a party with jumping on board the COVID mania, or at least not really doing much about the COVID mania that's gripped the states, about trundling down the path of net zero, about not doing enough about things like the ABC and other bugbears of our base voters. These are the things that we really need to muscle up on if we are to win people like you back. I agree, it's not your fault you're not voting the Liberal Party. It's probably our fault, and we need to get back to it.
Okay, thank you, George. Okay, so we're just going to, this is the most patient gentleman in the room, ladies and gentlemen. He's waited.
George, you spoke about the Liberal Party not having the kahunas to do things. Well, I'll put this question to you. Why the bloody hell is Malcolm Turnbull still in the Liberal Party? The treachery and what has gone on is outrageous. For God's sakes, kick the bastard out.
Yeah. Well, I probably can't talk about Malcolm Turnbull too much because I'll cross into the path of defamation, and he's got deeper pockets. He's got deeper pockets than I do.
So what I will say is that I think that certain miserable ghosts want to become martyrs, and that was the view going around. I think that the miserable ghosts were tolerated to not make them martyrs, but I think the time has probably come that miserable ghosts are busted. Don't you reckon, Gary?
Look, I think what you said is right. Look, he's a member of the New South Wales division. That's their business, and they can sort that out. And it's pretty hard to. I guess there's a lot of tolerance there. I've never once advocated that you don't vote for the Liberal Party, but I got shown the door at one stage. So, but anyway, things have been forgiven, and we move on. So look. I think the key thing here is that the party needs to sharpen up and respect its base. There's no doubt about that. And I think it is reasonable that the base is very impatient about these things. But it is also reasonable to say that if you muck around too much with your vote and you get it wrong with the last couple of numbers on your ballot paper, that you'll wake up with a Green government that will have Anthony Albanese as Prime Minister, and then Australia will be well and truly completely broken. And I think that is a very genuine and real threat.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our guests, Gary Hargrave and George Christensen, for joining us tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And that wraps up the formalities for the evening, everybody. Please feel free to stick around and have another drink and a chat. And we look forward to catching you at the next CPAC event. Thank you very much for your support once again. And check out The Other Side and The Good Sauce.